Hey everyone, I'm Lee Pacchia, and you are watching The Business of Law, the only web TV show focusing on the challenges and opportunities facing the legal profession. Great show coming up today. We have Tim Corcoran. Tim, of course, is a consultant to law firms, and he's also the president of the Legal Marketing Association. We're happy to have him join us. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you wrote this really interesting post on your blog a couple of weeks ago, talking about some of the things that law firms do that tends to stifle professional development for junior partners and senior associates. Can you tell us what prompted this post?
Sure. I've worked with a number of law firms that are really trying to thrive in the changing economy, and yet they have so many built-in structural challenges to success. The example I used in my recent article was a compensation scheme and a series of policies which, if they had tried to create a policy more insidious and more challenging to prevent younger partners and young associates from creating visibility and creating their own book of business, they couldn't have developed a more insidious plan. However, they thought it was truly remarkable in that it fostered collaboration. It did everything but.
It's amazing. It surprises me that there are firms that still struggle to get this. I mean, this is fundamental to the way law firms operate in today's age. Why do you think that we're still at this point where we're figuring out what I consider a very basic issue of running a law firm?
Well, I think it's possibly a lack of reference points. Law firm leaders tend to think they've got to figure out these business structures because their business is so complex and challenging and unlike others. But the reality is every business on the planet has to deal with origination. How do you reward salespeople, the hunters that go bring in the new business? It's hard. It's hard in every field. But how do you also reward the folks that deliver the work or keep the work or manage the relationship or upsell or renew the account in the years following? And law firms are trying to create these structures out of whole thin air, and the fact there's dozens and hundreds of examples we can draw on from industry that would give them good guidance.
What law firms, in your opinion, really get the origination issue right?
Well, I can't really name names based on my client base, but I've seen some examples of firms that are really trying to be progressive in this area. It starts usually in a pocket, in a practice area that's embracing alternative fees or sometimes forced to embrace alternative fees, and they've really got to figure out something different. They'd have to reward different behavior than they've traditionally rewarded, and so they're looking at the comp plans. I used to believe the comp plan had to be a lagging factor. Let's fix our firm, let's address the market changes, and let's fix our comp plan to reward the right behavior. I'm now around to the view that you really can't drive the behavior unless you change the comp plan first.
Another problem you point out, only partners at some firms, senior partners, are allowed to write or conduct speaking engagements for business development purposes. You have to admit that there's a concern when you're running a law firm that very junior associates could go out for a speaking engagement or write an article that might not exactly hit the right tone, and therefore they could embarrass the firm, right?
Possibly, although my reaction to this is whether it's a law firm partner or it's a business leader hiring someone, whether it's social media policies or writing articles, if you hire grown-ups and you treat them like grown-ups and you expect them to act properly, then you can trust them to act the right way. But if you're hiring the wrong people and you can't trust them to write an article that puts the firm in a positive light, then I'd look in the mirror and say, who am I hiring and what are my skills as a manager?
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a very interesting set of problems here that in some firms are going to exist and continue to exist because senior partners are working later and later into their careers. How does that generational dynamic play into your view of the world?
Well, I'm no expert in the generational divide, although at the recent Legal Marketing Association annual conference there was a fantastic session on understanding generational differences. And the easy knee-jerk reaction is to say that these young up-and-comers don't want to serve their time and don't want to work their way up the ladder. The reality is they're not bound by the traditions of the traditional law firm partner track. They may choose an alternative path for delivering quality work product and being good lawyers, but the standard run-of-the-mill sort of 7 to 10 years become partner, and by the way, most of us don't ever make that, so we leave anyway, isn't really their path. And so it doesn't mean they're not willing to work hard so much as it means that they're taking a different approach. And so the partners at the top are saying, well, we're defining our careers and we're defining their careers by how we did it, and they're seeing a difference. Frankly, like in any business, succession planning is critical. If the partners want to step off the stage and have a funded pension and have a going enterprise to help sustain their livelihood after they're done working, well, they've got to have people who are growing and nurturing the business all along.
Is that a driving factor in senior partners' decision making? I mean, the senior partners, of course, are the stakeholders of these organizations, and every day they're faced with a choice. They either take the profits of the enterprise and put it in their pocket, maybe give it to their grandkids, or they reinvest it to make the law firm more successful, more viable over the long term. It's tough to get senior partners to make changes that's going to take money out of their pockets. How do you tell them that might be in their best interest?
I think it all comes down to math. And there's an old joke that lawyers are really bad at math. But law firm finance is really not all that complex. It depends on how you define profit. If I maximize the hours on an engagement, yay, I win. I've made a lot of profit. But maybe that client doesn't ever hire me again because they see that I've padded hours or I've billed far more than my experience would otherwise justify. What if we have that same client that retains us for 25 matters over the course of 5 years? I keep a staff of people fully utilized working in that client matters. To me, that long-term profitability is far greater than maximizing an individual engagement. And so when partners start to shift their thinking about what profitability means away from hours to long-time value of a client, it changes the economics. And it's easy to demonstrate that changing behavior will actually put more money in their pocket rather than hoarding it the way they do now.
Does the partnership model make having these conversations and instituting these changes more difficult than they would be in other models?
Of course. I think a law firm partnership model, while it may have good tax benefits or liability benefits, it's a ridiculous model for governance. Giving people an equal vote in how an operation should run is just silly in my view.
We're operating in a world today where other countries are starting to allow law firms or participants in the legal profession to take other forms away from the partnership model. That said, as America continues to have these regulations in place that requires only lawyers to have equity in the firm, only to have a partnership model, are we putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage?
Quite possibly. The reality is the bar associations and the lawyers themselves are trying to hold on to this mentality, this guild approach, because they equate it with the quality of the work product. But as I'll paraphrase one of my good friends who's an in-house counsel, he says, look, nowhere in my job description does it say I've got to protect the model of the big law business. All I'm trying to do is deliver high-quality legal services to my CEO. And by the way, my CEO doesn't care at all about even my job. Mm-hmm. It's about managing risk and managing the legal function. And so if he can go out and procure legal services using an alternative means, that's his job and that's his right. Whether or not the bars and the law firms will adapt it, that's their problem.
Before you were talking about the annual LMA conference down in Florida a couple of weeks ago, everyone seems to be talking about the GC panel that took place at the conference. Why is that?
Well, a GC panel is always a good opportunity for marketers who in many law firms don't have direct client interaction to really hear right from the mouths of the clients. This year it was slightly different. The GCs on the panel sort of recognize that the marketers probably can't directly change the behavior of the partners, but they can maybe influence the partners and try to drive better processes and practices. But I will tell you, this year I'm starting to see a shift. Finally, in-house counsel are realizing after 5 years of just demanding discounts, and I exaggerate a little bit, but a potted plant can demand discounts from your suppliers. But now the CEOs and the CFOs are coming back to the in-house counsel again and saying, what more have you done to embrace continuous improvement? And the GCs are saying, I can't ask my law firms for more discounts.
Yeah, so what comes after discounts? That's an interesting
the discounts are the easy part.
How
to increase throughput, how to increase the quality, how to look upstream. And so rather than saying, let's find cheaper litigators, how do we prevent litigation from happening? How do we turn the in-house law department into not just a cheaper cost center, but a revenue center or a strategic advantage? And the GCs and the CLOs we're seeing now are starting to embrace that and really digging into this.
How are they doing it?
Well, they're talking to folks like me and others, and they're saying, how do we change the operations of our law department? Rather than just sort of make that decision of cheaper law firms or maybe bringing more FTEs internally and have a few more in-house counsel, they're saying, how do we change how we operate? How do we use analytics to understand what work is best outsourced, what work is best delivered internally, and what work should we try to eliminate completely because the business people don't need our assistance?
Wild stuff. Tim, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks so much.
If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check out our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. See you next week.